Hey, this is Paul James Caden, one of your co-hosts for the podcast People Under the Stairs.
And this is Stan Wanglund, the other half of the amazing duo of the People Under the Stairs. And we're hoping that you'll tune in and listen to our wonderful podcast. Hey, Paul, tell the folks some of the things that we talk about in the podcast.
We talk about a wide array of subjects, the paranormal, UFOs, missing 411, even such things as some of the conspiracy theories out there that are wild, things that are happening in the news and our world. If it's strange, if it's weird, if it bears talking about, we'll cover it on the show.
Yeah, we do it from a really balanced perspective. We just don't, come up with something, throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. We try and have, the actual facts of what's going on with interesting people as guests on the show, different authors, and, allowing them to tell their story uninterrupted and, in a full and interesting format. So you can get into anything from artificial intelligence to people who say they've been abducted and been on a flying saucer.
So if you enjoy those topics, we hope you'll give us a listen and join us under the stairs.
Yeah, and for those of you who regularly listen to podcasts, even those of you who are new, we're on all the podcasting platforms, and we're very, very easy to find. So give us a listen.
Welcome to Paranormal Heart, a place where people can talk about their paranormal experiences. With your host, Kat Ward, along with a special segment, Oddities with John Mallard.
Welcome back, folks, to Paranormal Heart, where you can find new episodes on the second and last Sunday of each month on Podbean. You can also find us on sparkradionet.org, YouTube, iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, and any place you find fine podcasts. This episode's shout-out goes to my listeners in Greece. Thank you so very much for being a part of the Paranormal Heart community. I really appreciate you all. Folks, I wanted to mention a friend of mine, Vinny Vineyard, aka Funk Master V, who has a brand new TV network. He's got his own wing of self-produced paranormal shows with himself and a couple of wrestling buddies that I think you might enjoy. If you think that name sounds familiar, Funk Master V was a guest not too long ago. And if you're interested in checking out his new network, go on over to asytv.com. That's asytv.com. Don't forget to tell him that Cat and Boo sent you. As always, before I get to my guest, enjoy Oddities with Paranormal Heart's very own odd guy, John Mallard. Over to you, John.
Fiddly diddly catch and gilly me get me forangan. A fiddly diddly catch and gilly me I'm a leprechaun. A fiddly diddly 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 get me forangan. A fiddly diddly diddly diddly. You're back on Oddities with John. Welcome to Oddities, strange facts that are true about an odd world. And as you can tell by my somewhat drunken ramble right there, we're going to focus on St. Patty's Day. Yeah! Newfoundland is huge with St. Patrick's Day, so this is actually really, really fun. So I'm going to give you some really quick and dirty facts about St. Patrick's Day that might actually kind of surprise you. Number one, St. Patrick was actually from Wales, not Ireland. And his real name was Mywin Suckett. Yeah. Hey, maybe I'll go home and see Mywin Suckett. At the age of 16, he was captured by a group of Irish pirates and was taken to Ireland as a slave. He tended sheep in Ireland for 6 years before he actually escaped. When he returned home, he studied Christianity to become a priest. He then took his teachings back to Ireland. Man, he's got some huge balls there, where he established the Christian church. He changed his name to Patricius, which means father figure. St. Patrick's representative color is actually blue, not green. There are reportedly more than 13 million pints of Guinness being consumed on St. Patrick's Day alone. In fact, a 2012 estimate pegged the total amount spent on beer for St. Patrick's Day celebrations at 245 million. Quite the bar tab. From 1903 to 1970, most bars and pubs were closed on St. Patrick's Day because it was considered a religious holiday or a dry holiday. You had to drink at home with your wives. Drowning the shamrock is known to be a good luck and is actually meant to give you a prosperous year. What does that mean? It means you're actually going to drink a shamrock. St. Patrick's Day falls on Lent, but the restriction of drinking is lifted for the day. The harp is the national symbol of Ireland, not the shamrock, just letting you all know. Also, St. Patrick used the shamrock to preach about the Holy Trinity. Odds of finding a four-leaf clover, do you ever wonder what it is actually 1 in 10,000. Hey, I hope you all really enjoyed this month's holidays and have yourself a safe and wonderful St. Patrick's Day. And remember, and most important thing of all, don't drink and drive, or the wee leprechaun named John from Newfoundland will come get you and be clean out of you. And I know I'm not a very good Irish guy. Apparently I sound Irish though in my accent. You know, us Newfies in quotation marks actually have a little bit of the old Irish blood flowing through us. And a whole lot of that Guinness that I talked about earlier. Back to you, Kat.
Thanks, John. My next guest has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, an MBA degree, and a Doctor of Divinity. She is a best-selling author of 6 books who helps people visualize and access whole new worlds of possibilities. She's host of Living the Quantum Dream on the Dream Vision 7 radio network. She's been featured on Coast to Coast AM, the Discovery Channel, just to name a couple. And she's presented papers on international conferences on science, spirituality, and consciousness. Today, we talk about the Mandela Effect. So please welcome Cynthia Sue Larson. Hello, Cynthia. Welcome to Paranormal Heart.
Hi, Kat. Really glad to be here today.
I'm so happy you're here. This is a topic that really interests me. Well, every topic that I do is interesting to me, but this one in particular, because I don't know a whole lot going down the rabbit hole. I know a little bit. My daughter and I have actually had a Mandela Effect experience ourselves not too long ago that, if you don't mind, I'll tell you about later. But yes, if you could please, I'm not even sure where to start. So I'll just give it over to you. To the listeners, we're talking about the Mandela Effect with Cynthia Sue Larson.
Well, this is a topic I've been focusing on actually for longer than it was called the Mandela Effect. So I think that's kind of interesting. And it's been riveting my full attention since the 1990s when I started noticing what are now called personal Mandela effects. But back then, I was just trying to figure out what to call it when things appear, disappear, transform, or transport, kind of like stuff happening on its own and absolutely changes to the historical facts are occurring. So I was looking around to see what to call it. And back then, if you remember the 1990s, some people do, the internet was nothing like it is now in 2020. No. Totally different.
Very different.
There was no social media of any kind. There were no chat rooms. But really, are you chopping up? Say that again.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, good. So I started just looking around to see what would I call this, and I came on the idea of calling it reality shifts. And then within a few years, I later found out author PMH Atwater had written a book called Future Memory, and in that book there was a chapter called Reality Shifts, and she was using the term the same way I was using it. So that was really, I think, the first terminology. And then if you follow the books like The Holographic Universe, there was a physicist that wrote that book, and he also kind of touched on he almost used the word reality shift in that book to talk about when things just move on their own. And so that was really the term that I was calling it. But now we have the Mandela Effect, which is a term that came into being based on what I call the alive again phenomenon. And Nelson Mandela was observed, I think Art Bell was the first one to really mention it around April 2001 on his Art Bell Coast to Coast radio show. And he got hundreds, if not thousands, of people writing and phoning in saying that they were very surprised that Nelson Mandela was alive at that time, 2001, because they remembered that he'd passed away. And then a period of years after that, the term Mandela Effect came into being when there was a blogger named Fiona Broom, and she popularized the actual term Mandela Effect to basically to mention this one kind of reality shift where usually it's a celebrity, but it could be a friend or a neighbor or someone that you know for sure they were dead and now they're alive again. So that's it's just one type of history changing. This phenomenon pretty much is, it encompasses everything you think that it might encompass. And then it continues to do even more than that and continue to surprise us all.
I was actually one of those people who thought Mr. Mandela had passed in jail several years prior. And so when I found out he had been released, I'm like, wow, wait a minute. That's not right. I thought he had passed on. And I asked a few other people as well. And I'm like, yeah, I thought so too. And at first I thought, okay, well, maybe I was just remembering something differently. But then I started hearing about other people believing all that and started hearing about other things and then started hearing about the phrase Mandela Effect. And it's very, very intriguing. I'm sorry for the background noise. My husband's making spaghetti sauce.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you've experienced it too. That's usually the first hurdle. So it's hard to even carry on a conversation with someone. It could be a friend or family member if they haven't personally experienced one of these things. Mm-hmm. Because back when I was talking to people, my neighbors, friends, and family, a lot of people would just take a couple of cautious steps backwards when I brought the subject up. Yeah. Like, have you noticed reality changing? Have you noticed some things aren't what they seem to be? And people would just be like, okay, then. But my background is in physics. I studied physics at UC Berkeley. And that's what I like to bring into the conversation and the whole concept of and the discussion about Mandela effects and reality shifts. So I like to take a look at what do we know for sure from physics, because that also studies the nature of reality, that we can hold up side by side along with what we're experiencing in the Mandela effect and notice, well, what do you know? Got some similar patterns going on here. And when I do that, I see a lot of similar patterns between quantum physics and the Mandela effect. So that's what I find very interesting. It seems like there's kind of almost a one-to-one correlation between bizarre stuff we're noticing with the Mandela effect and typical quantum weirdness that you see from time to time in the so-called quantum realm. That idea that what stays in the quantum realms, what happens there stays there. That's not really true. What's much more true is that we would expect from time to time to see some of the weird quantum stuff like spooky action at a distance and entanglement and superposition of states, teleportation, all these sorts of things. We would expect to see them actually on every scale, not just with quantum particles. Because when you look at the fact that everything is intrinsically quantum, then that means that our consciousness is actually running the show. So these are big ideas. It's easy for me to talk through them pretty fast, but the truth is a lot of people need some time there. They're like, wait a minute, hold up there a minute.
Yeah.
that went real fast. But I'm just kind of laying it out like that's how I see it. And I do realize that a lot of people are coming into the Mandela effect in the last few years. We saw a massive just a whole bunch of people creating videos and blogs about the topic, just since like 2015, 2016, 2017. So the last few years have been banner years for the Mandela Effect. And amongst those people, a lot of people are pointing fingers at CERN and wanting to make sure that, well, how do we know this is not like a glitch in the matrix kind of thing?
I was going to mention CERN. You probably knew that.
Could feel it. Yeah, a lot of people want to take a look at that, and that's fine. But when I've been studying this phenomenon, what I was noticing is that it didn't start in the 90s when I was looking at it. It's actually, when I think about my life, I see examples of the Mandela Effect going back into the 1970s. And, maybe I was born in the 60s, so I don't think I was really able to notice it that much in the first decade of my life. But I did start noticing it in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. So it's been happening all of the time I've been around. And then when I look at research from indigenous peoples and just people noticing what we would call reality shifts and Mandela effects, this is recognized phenomenon. It's not just new. I think we've got evidence that takes it back for the entire history of the planet and all of human existence.
Now, I have heard some people say that they firmly believe, and I'm not really, really smart when it comes to science, but some people seem to believe that with CERN, perhaps that affected time as far back as we can, I'm not even sure how to word this, because I've only heard of the Mandela Effect for the past few years, and you're saying it goes back even further than that. So some people believe that the CERN actually has affected that, so it's kind of changed our history. Have you ever heard anyone with those claims? And if so, what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I do hear people say that, sure. And I think it's a natural human thing. We want to be able to, on some level, feel like some human somewhere has their hands on the steering wheel of whatever mysterious phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that needs to be true. I mean, even I could play devil's advocate and say, okay, maybe that's happening. But even if it is happening, then for sure, CERN would have to be operating within whatever rules of the universe allow for this sort of thing to happen. So they're taking advantage of a natural phenomenon and amping it up. If we're saying they're doing that, then they're already working with something that exists and making more of it. It's not like it wasn't already there.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever watched the television show Fringe?
Yes, that's an interesting show.
That I used to love that show. And when I first heard about the effect, the Mandela Effect, I started thinking about the Fringe, the television show, especially the last couple of, I can't remember how many seasons it was on, when they had the two realities kind of crashing and realities were changing. And I thought, oh, good grief, that almost sounds like the Mandela Effect. It was just a very interesting TV show. Folks, if you can find that TV show, it's kind of like an X-Files type thing. Very, very good show, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah, it was well done. It's in my experience, it's a little bit different than how I notice reality shifts but of course it would be. It's fiction fantasy. What I liked about it was, like you said, it's really clear at showing at least what two possible realities might be. Mm-hmm. In many of our experiences, we witness a lot more than just two realities, but I think they want to keep it simple for a TV show. If they had many, many, many more, it's then like, which Walter are they looking at? Is it Walter or exactly. Walternet or Walternet 115?
Kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with the show The Flash right now. That's I watch it on Netflix. And they have, I don't know how many Earths, and they all have like Earth 1, Earth 2. Everybody has a number, and I'm thinking that's already been done, but whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's so it gets a little tedious.
Yeah.
So the good thing about Fringe is it doesn't get tedious. They keep it action packed and focused on the characters. So it's really worth watching for that.
Yeah, I agree. I was reading up on your on 3 of your recent Mandela Effect experiences. One about the doctor's office, and I call it the mystery laundry, and then the rose. Would you like to tell the listeners a little bit about those?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's been a banner month for me. And this is for someone who experiences a lot of these things. So the first one that you mentioned is the situation with the doctor's office, where and keep in mind this happened in January, before the this current panic about the Chinese flu was really hitting its stride. So I'd gone just for a checkup, and I'm waiting in the waiting room, and lots of people are coughing. It was in January, early January, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird that many people are coughing. like it's a little bit nerve-wracking. But I just needed to fill out the paperwork, check in at the check-in desk, let them know I'm there. And as I was standing in the place where you'd line up, there wasn't much of a line, but I clearly saw kind of a pushy, bossy little sign next to a little dispenser for.
Nope, I lost you there. Uh-oh.
Okay.
Oh, okay, got you back. Skype. I'm sorry.
Okay. Are you?
I can hear you. Are you still there?
Good.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yay. Okay. So okay, I'll start at the. So I was in the waiting room at the doctor's office, and I saw that there was a sign that looked to me a little bit bossy, a little bit pushy. It was very much indicating that every person must take a mask and wear it. I thought, well, and they said because it's flu season or something. I thought that's just a little bit on the bossy side. And I think because it seemed a bit pushy, I didn't take one. Sort of like reverse psychology. And then everybody's coughing in that waiting room, and I'm thinking, you know what? That's a good idea. So I go and take a mask, put it on, and then I notice it's kind of like other people were coming in, and they were checking in, and they were not putting the mask on. And then I saw that the sign that I had seen was no longer there. Nobody had taken it away. It was just gone. And I remember it clearly because it was like annoying that it said every person must take a mask, must wear a mask. And remember, it's before this huge flu outbreak. Now I would think that's kind of normal. Like, okay, good idea.
Yeah.
But back in early January, it just seemed kind of pushy. So, and that it gets more interesting because when I did get called in to see the doctor, at one point during the exam, the doctor asked me, are you sick? And I said, no. And he said, why are you wearing a mask? And that was just, I knew it was going to sound weird to bring up the whole Mandela Effect thing and to say, well, a few minutes ago, there was a sign, a very pushy, bossy sign that insisted everyone must wear one.
Yeah.
And now the sign's gone. I know how these kind of conversations tend to go, so I just didn't go there with it. So that was the first one. And that was early January. And then a couple more of them, you mentioned, yeah. Okay, the next one was also January. I was in Boulder, Colorado for a taping of, I was on Gaia TV. It was Open Minds with Regina Meredith, a wonderful show on Gaia. And so I'm there to do the show. And the night before, I was having dinner with a friend because I told her that I'd be in town. And it was just someone, when you get together with someone that you love talking to. And the reason I love talking to her, we did this that evening. We just started talking about how good it can get and just where this Mandela effect can conceivably take all of us on Earth. Mm-hmm. That because we're able to keep envisioning how good it can get for all of us, we can actually pretty much eradicate any problem that we might think we're facing. That includes global warming. It doesn't even matter what it is. It's like whatever the problem might be, we can pretty much guarantee it won't be a problem for long. And so we're just kind of blissing out on this kind of high vibration conversation. And it was really super fun. And at some point I said, well, I'd love to get a picture with you before I go. And so I stood up, and as I was just moving to be closer to her, a rose fell down right in front of me. I didn't quite catch it, but I picked it up off the floor, and it was like a fresh cut, beautiful smelling, beautiful shaped, gorgeous little pinkish red rose, just kind of like a rose from heaven. And immediately my friend and I were checking the entire restaurant. Like, did someone throw it at me? Or, why would someone do that? But there was hardly anyone there. We were there. The restaurant technically had shut down, I think. The wait staff kept telling us, no, you guys can stay. Mm-hmm. I think they felt the high vibes too, and they liked it. I don't know. But anyway. So we're the only ones there. And there's this rose that fell out of nowhere. And it wasn't, there weren't roses on the table. There were no roses anywhere in the restaurant except the one that fell at my feet. So there's that. And then third one happened on Groundhog's Day when I had been doing a radio show with Moneybag 73 and the Rip-On Rabbit. And we were talking about the Mandela Effect for the Rip-On Rabbit Mandela Monthly show. And at the end, that show went on for a couple hours. Plus, I'd been on early to make sure that all the technology was working before the show. So after all that, then, and I'd been on a video connection so they could see me the whole time. And then after all that, I turned that off and went to the laundry room, which is just near where I was doing the recording, because I'd started some laundry, but not put it in the dryer. I didn't want that noisy machine running during the show. Yep. So what I did is I went to the laundry room to see if I could get that started again. But before I even got to go there, I could hear the machine was running like it had just started. I thought, well, that's not right. Because my immediate thought was, how long has that been running?
Yeah.
But I knew it had not been running. So my next thought was my husband must have started it, but he doesn't know that some of the laundry was in the washing machine. So I go into the laundry room, check the washing machine, and nothing's in there. It's like someone had moved the laundry from the I had two batches, you see, like you wash some clothing separates from the other, and then you combine it all in the dryer. Everything was in the dryer, and it was completely done. Like right as soon as it started, it was all done. It had all been combined correctly, and it was done properly, which is amazing because that dryer, it doesn't do anything properly. It's kind of an old dryer. And
Yeah, I gotcha.
We have to set a timer and then kind of guess if it's done or not and check it. But no, it was done perfectly. And that's really weird because there were giant towels in there with other stuff. So the whole thing was amazing. It's like the laundry did itself is what happened.
Too bad it couldn't have folded itself too.
Yes, that's next.
That was amazing. When I read that, I actually out loud said, wow.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, you cut out too. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Oh, Skype is
Okay,
being
good.
a pain in the backside. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yes.
I can hear. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, folks. Skype sometimes gives people a hard time. I don't know why. Who can say? I'd like to be able to share an experience that my daughter and I had recently, if you don't mind.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. Yes, please.
So we're in the Ottawa Valley in Ontario, Canada. So we're a couple hours away from Ottawa, and we're driving by a local coffee shop. And my daughter says, "When did that tree get put there?" And I looked at her, I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "And it's a really, really large tree." And I said, "That tree has always been there, honey." She says, No, that was not there before. I said, "Yes, it was." She says, "No, it wasn't." And sometimes companies will transplant trees, but this was way too big of a tree to be able to just transplant, right? It was an old tree. So I looked at her, I said, "No, that tree has been there." "No, it hasn't. I swear it wasn't there before. It was just a clear area on the front lawn, no tree." And then we just looked at each other, and she says, "Mom, was that the Mandela Effect?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was." She swears there was no tree there before, and I remember there was always been one there.
Oh, isn't that interesting? I find that fascinating. It's always more reassuring, of course, when two people agree that something had never been there, and then when something weird happens, it's human nature. We want to share that with someone else, rather than be the weirdo that, like, "Oh, great, I saw something change and no one agrees with me."
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but that is the way the Mandela Effect works. You don't always get validation from everybody. So like you remember that tree's always been there, but for your daughter, not so much.
No, and she has a decent memory. She's 18. She has a better memory than I do.
Right.
But no, she swears that tree was not there before, and I'm like, "No, it's always been there." And like I said, it's not like they can easily transplant a tree that large. It's an older one. So, no. So at least we both agreed that it was probably it was probably the Mandela effect, but what do you think causes it? Like, why is it some people swear something has happened and other people have not?
What I really view, and I've written many books about this. My first was Reality Shifts that came out in like the late 1990s, and then most recent one is Quantum Jumps. And I've got examples like this tree one, and the fact that sometimes reality shifts don't include everybody. It's very interesting. It seems like what's happening is that we're actually witnessing some level of ourselves, a level of consciousness that is us. You could think of it as maybe a future self or a bigger version of ourselves or a bigger collective of ourselves that is witnessing these things. So it seems like it's a wake-up kind of a call. Like there is a global awakening happening on the planet right now to acknowledge that we're much more powerful than we think we are. And we're starting to see that with things like the placebo effect. I get into a lot of that in my book, Quantum Jumps. And the placebo effect just means that you can do better. You can be smarter, stronger, faster, with more willpower. Your relationships can be better. You can fix everything just by doing some simple, very simple things. Like you can point to your head and you're going to be able to be intellectually sharper. And it's scientifically proven that that is the case. So things like that are true, and that makes no sense logically, right? I mean, why would that even make sense? But this is actually the time of the science of embodied cognition. Like you can make yourself happy by smiling. You can improve your relationships by putting your hand over your heart, and you'll be coming more from your heart center. You name it, and you can pretty much change anything. You can not have had a good night's sleep, but tell yourself you did, and perform equally well on cognitive functioning tests with people who did not, who you didn't have that lack of sleep that you suffered. So there's just so much, huge growing body of evidence to suggest that there's definitely something going on here. And that's why I like to mention that kind of science in my books, because it sort of gives you the background that now that we're noticing this Mandela effect, these reality shifts, we can take advantage of it and kind of make our own quantum jumps, kind of surfing the wave as that tide is moving us along. I think it's a good thing. I think the fact.
Oh, lost you. Oh no.
Are you there?
Oh yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay.
We're good.
It's okay.
Keep going.
Yeah, good. So the fact that we don't always experience the same shift is kind of showing us that there's not one objective, true reality, which is kind of like when you watch a show like The Fringe, the TV show we mentioned, there's an idea there that there's one reality that we belong in, that's the correct one, what we might think of as objective reality. This whole Mandela effect is showing us something completely different. And that does match what we're learning from science as well, that, and that's my favorite study from 2019, that you can have two observers, same place, same time, looking at the same thing, getting two different results. And that was the work of physicists working at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, Scotland, in conjunction and collaboration with scientists from Vienna, Austria, and that they were able to see for sure that you can do that. And so that's very much what we're noticing with the Mandela effect. You've got two observers. Your daughter says, that tree, Mom, that was never there. I believe your daughter. I also believe you. And that's where we are in our science right now.
I believe her too, and obviously I believe myself as well. But being into the paranormal field that I am, and my family kind of, my children kind of grew up with Mom being a little weird. They talking about things like that. Now that they're older, it doesn't seem weird to them anymore. It's just like, oh yeah, this is what happened.
Right. That's good. And I think most of our young people in their 20s are aware of the Mandela effect right now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hit a tipping point in our society that there is a base level of acceptance for this phenomenon, even if it's not yet fully understood what's causing it, even though a lot of people still think might be like Art Bell thought it was caused by time travelers. He'd had John Titor on his show talking about time travel, and maybe that's what influenced him. I was on Art Bell's show and he was mentioning that to me. Like, do I think it's time travel? And
Go ahead.
My take on it was that's not necessary because quantum physics basically has time travel built into it. In other words, you don't need to make it complicated because the science of our reality already includes that you can change the past. That's built right in. The indigenous people knew about it. I think we are doing it. And you don't need to have a machine or a John Titor to make that happen. It is happening. But it gets to that question you had earlier. Could scientists at CERN be speeding things up? Could they be tweaking it more? Maybe. But the thing is, it's already happening. So it's something we can learn to do. And I've been contacted by time travelers myself. So that's also a very interesting aspect of the whole story.
Yeah, I heard you talk about that before. I think it was on Dave Scott's show, Spaced Out Radio, and you mentioned
Right.
that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think because, and people that follow things, conspiracy theories about the Project Looking Glass and all that, you can look that up and see what that is about. But I was not tracking that per se. But what I found interesting in my own experience was that I was aware that there was a possible future in which Earth might, at some future point, I don't see that as a strong probability now, but up until 2010, I felt like it was a strong probability that there might be a central artificial general intelligence that would be kind of imprisoning humanity in order to keep the peace, maintain the ecosystem, prevent humans from doing crazy things. So they were kind of like a built-in safety net for humanity, which ends up removing humanity's free will and free choice. So that seemed to me, that was not a good outcome. And that's why I personally felt really good about 2010 when I felt like that probability was finished off. And then right about the same time I felt like that was over, then three different people stepped forward and emailed me telling me, I think you also, that lots of people have had the experience that I did not exist before 2010. So I get that a lot, or, whatever, fill in the year. But so I think that's interesting, very interesting, because I'm aware that what I'm doing, even if you do think CERN is messing with it or there might be some artificial intelligence, yeah, fine. But the reason that it's worth studying how to do this is because then it doesn't matter what CERN is doing. It doesn't matter what some central computer is doing, because we have the power. I mean, what I recommend is let's get this ability back for humanity, because we totally have the ability to change everything in a good direction. And that's what I see happening is what looks like a great awakening to me.
That almost sounds like what people are referring to now as manifesting. That you want to have something happen and you just positively think about it, and you just manifest it, bring it into being. Do you think that's the same thing?
Well, often when people talk about law of attraction or manifesting, there's a big egoic element where they tend to assume that they're one physical body and they don't need to worry about how they fit in the bigger picture, and there's not so much of a spiritual connection. I would recommend definitely keep working on yourself and how you're providing a greater good for the collective of all of humanity plus all of the world. If you're not, then it would be a good time to look at that. And the reason is because what I see happening is our subconscious is driving these Mandela effects. It's not so much coming from our conscious mind. So if a person thinks like, well, I know what I want, I'm focusing on it, and I'm bringing the right energy, and I did a ritual or whatever, that's all well and good. But the trouble is, if they haven't integrated their subconscious with everything else they're doing, they'll get shadow effects. They'll get, and they'll think it might be something besides themselves, but it's actually just elements of themselves that they have not been authentic and honest and compassionate and kind within themselves. They haven't dealt with their own shadow stuff, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I can't tell you how fascinating this is.
Yeah, it's super fascinating.
It is. And like I said, when I first heard about it, I was shocked at how many other people had actually heard about it as well. And I'm almost convinced nowadays, for me, it almost seems like it happened overnight, how all of a sudden people are being offended by everything. I remember a time, it seemed like just yesterday, that you could joke around, you could say things, and people weren't offended. And all of a sudden, everyone's offended. And I'm thinking, when the heck did that happen? And someone, yeah, and someone said it's probably the Mandela effect. It seems to be the go-to answer now for anything that's unexplained.
Right. Like when there's that big switch over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. But the idea about this whole thing and the roots in consciousness, they go way back. I like to look at philosophers in the way that they've taken a look at what is consciousness, because to me, that's also the nature of reality and it's who we really are. And that comes from a very simple practice of being aware of being aware. So for an example, you've got that first order perception that people are a lot ruder, or not ruder. What's the example you gave? Yeah, they take things so
Offended.
seriously now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get offended. Oh my gosh, you're right. So easily. And so that's your first order of perception. Like, okay, people are getting really offended. And you can jump back and do a second level reflective perception of that. What that means is you're being aware of your awareness. So it gives you the ability to integrate your experience over all of your levels of awareness. And just kind of get a feeling sense of, okay, how long has that been really going on? Is this really a new thing? For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And you might get some validation, like, yeah, I think it really is.
It's
And
probably
then,
it's probably been going on a lot longer than I realize. But to me, it seems like it just happened. Like you said, a flick of a switch.
right. And that can happen when we reach tipping points as collective consciousness. So there can be a big sort of a groundswell of what's now considered normal or accepted that wasn't before. And so we are social animals in humanity. We don't think of it that way. We tend to think each of us is an individual, but we really do work together quite well. And we're all very intuitive. So it seems like there's a lot of kind of bringing ourselves together. And when we notice these Mandela effects, sometimes we'll suddenly kind of get flipped into that reality where that whatever it is that we're noticing is now like, whoa, and you can't unsee whatever it was.
True.
So yeah. A lot of people notice the body changes are big for them, unless they're already working in medicine, because then anytime you're too close to that kind of a shift,
Oh, think I lost you again. Oh no.
Okay, there you are.
Oh, there we are.
Yay!
I should time it and see if it's happening every like at the same amount of time. That's strange.
Wow. Yeah, very strange. So anyway, yeah, to me, this is like living a waking dream, this whole thing of the Mandela effect. It shows us that a lot of the things that we're subconsciously feeling and thinking about that we need, those can manifest. And if we've got subconscious fears, a lot of that stuff is bubbling up too. So that's what I was referring to with the shadow stuff earlier, which is why I like to ask the question, how good can it get? And I like to every day make an affirmation to be my best self, to be living a miraculous life, accessing optimal realities, and being aware that I can get what I need even when I don't know what it is. So that's the stuff that I like to do. It's not so much depending on my brain or my rational mind to lead the way, because we're not really doing that with the Mandela effect. We're getting a lot more subconscious effects. And so that's why I like to make it more of a full conscious, full body experience, which makes it a little different from your standard law of attraction that we were talking about earlier.
I've been hearing more and more people saying that there's a correlation between the Mandela effect and vortices. I had a guest on, Dan Shaw. He is the vortex detective, and he has been going around, he's been traveling all over looking for various vortexes. Have you been hearing anything about that lately as well? I'm only hearing a few people talk about that.
It's been recognized that people who can apport things, like physically bring things into being that weren't there before, are often working with the mini vortex in their hand chakra, for example. And I've actually experienced that myself. I write about it in my book, Reality Shifts, where...
Oh no, I lost you again. I do apologize to my listeners. Oh, there you go. You're back.
Okay. Yay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Wow. Maybe it's storms or something.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, so I've experienced things just appearing just below my hand chakra. That is a vortex. All of our chakras are vortices. We've got them in our bodies, and we're like little walking vortices, manifestation devices. And with the hand chakras, I've seen a lot of things just show up right under my hand or someone else's hand. Like, for example, I've seen things materialize just within 3 inches of the palm of my hand, including my daughter's tooth that she'd lost at school that day. And she came home crying because her tooth had fallen out, and the teacher said, wrap it in a paper towel, and you'll have it at the end of the day. But the trouble is, somehow it fell out of her backpack, and then at the end of the day, she notices it's not in her backpack, and there are all these paper towels all over the floor. It's just a mess in the classroom, and she doesn't know which one it is, so she came home crying. And so she went to bed. I told her, don't worry, the tooth fairy knows what's going on. And so I'm at my dresser just making a little note to myself on a little card that my daughter had lost her tooth, and here's what day it is. And as I'm writing the note, just above my hand, a tooth just materializes out of thin air and lands, like right where I had been writing on the card.
Oh, wow.
Just just out of thin air. There's no one else in the room. This is not a magic trick. This is just, it's like the real thing, the real magic. And there's no blood on this tooth. Now, if you ever have seen children's teeth when they lose them, even if it was earlier in the day, there'd be some dark brown, blood, I don't mean to be gross, but it wouldn't look clean. This looked like it had been through some kind of sonic jewelry cleaning device.
Oh, wow.
A perfectly clean child's tooth. Yeah. And so that was amazing. That was one of several things that have just manifested right near the palm of my hand or someone else's hand. Another time I was doing a chakra painting, an aura picture for a woman, and I was seeing the crystalline quality of her heart, describing it to her. And then as I'm painting her heart, this cute little pink color, out of, again, thin air, a tiny crystal just lands right in the paint where I'd been painting.
Oh, wow.
And she saw it too. We were both there. It just came out of nowhere. So things like that can and do happen. And that's why vortices, I'm agreeing with your guest if he's noticing things happen in them. Yes, they do. Because you've got the energy required. When you want to make a conscious quantum jump, then what you need to bring to whatever the situation is the requisite energy to kind of jump from one state to another. And like emotion, perhaps, or just feeling energized. And when you're working with vortices, it's like an energy source. So you're right there with the energy.
Makes me wonder if people are experiencing the Mandela Effect. How can I word this? I'm sure you've heard of ley lines before.
Yes.
If there are particular areas on the planet that this effect seems to be happening more than other areas because of areas like ley lines.
Yes. When I visited high energy places, and I talk about this, my favorite subject that I always talk about for the last 20 years, when I go to those energy places, that people, of course, they instantly agree. Yes, of course, we have many of these manifestation, reality shift, quantum jump experiences here because this is a sacred place with lots of energy lines, and people always experience these things here. So yeah, that's a good thing to do if you want to experience one of these these events, and it's not happening because your energy, you don't meditate enough, or you're not doing, whatever it takes to get that energy boost that you need. Then you can definitely go to a place that has that energy. Yes, and experience it.
Do you feel that with these areas, there's more people when they claim that they're having paranormal experiences, seeing ghosts and everything? Do you think that would be a correlation with all of this?
It could be. When I've seen a ghost, there was the one most classic time was in the house I live in now. And I think what happened is because I saw a man's outline. He just sort of walked. I was in the living room in a rocking chair, relaxing. I just bought the house and was trying to get used to being in this new place. And I could see the shadow of this shadowy figure come from the kitchen into the dining room. He took a couple steps into the dining room. Then he saw me, froze. He just like froze. It's like this shadow man figure staring at me. And I was really calm. I just, for some reason, I just felt like this must be Mr. Hillers, the gentleman who died, and that's the reason they'd sold the house. So I just was telepathically thinking to him, I think you might be dead, and I live here now, so that's why I'm here. I'm the new owner of this house. I was just sort of trying to bring him up to speed with what's going on.
Yeah.
And then he just faded. It's like he just sort of dematerialized. He was just a shadow anyway, and he just kind of vanished. So that was, but yeah, it's some people have an idea with the Mandela effect that we all, like, for example, one guy says we all died in 2012, and now the whole planet ended and we're all dead. And so we can't die. And there are some theories going around like this. And in that kind of a configuration of viewing reality, you might say, well, that guy died, but in some reality he's alive, and there was a little bit of kind of bleed through or what have you. But he didn't look real. It wasn't like with a real Mandela effect reality shift. It's different than a ghost. If you've seen ghosts, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, like a real. If you see a real person, they're actually there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen real people and then they vanish, and that would be the Mandela effect. Like, okay, that person was there or that car was there. Now it's gone. Where did it go? It's like it was there and now it's not. Or something just pops in out of nowhere. That I've definitely seen, and that's not a ghost. So I would say they're different phenomena.
Now that I think back, I have had instances like that when I was younger. I think I'm looking at someone as plain as day. They're right there, and I blink, and then they're gone. I'm like, okay, where did they go?
Right. And kids are really open to this, but I don't think anybody talks about it, usually in most families. Maybe now the kids are lucky enough to be hearing about the idea and also witnessing it. But we get socialized. That's what I meant by our concept of reality is shaped by the people around us. So your kids are lucky that they get to hear you talking about these topics, because it keeps their worldview open much more than it would be without hearing about it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Open mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
It makes such a big difference.
Yes. It's funny, especially my daughter, she thinks it's an interesting thing, but she doesn't want any of her friends to know what her mother's into.
Yeah, that happened with my daughters too at that same age.
Yeah.
And then, but then we took a trip to Europe when they were in high school, and I thought that was so cool because the Europeans would ask, "What do I do?" And then I would tell them, and my daughters looked a little bit concerned, like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, here we go again.
But then my daughters got to see how everybody was, at least all the Europeans were treating me with so much respect.
Nice.
Even when I described this, what sounded to my daughters like real woo-woo out there stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was taken very seriously and with great interest by every single European we talked to. I loved that. So,
Did they also share experiences that they had after they found out what you do?
that doesn't typically happen with like just your average person, as you might know.
Yeah.
Once in a blue moon, and it's a lovely thing when it happens, but usually not. But fortunately, as my daughters get older, then they I think that now they're in their 20s, almost 30, and they're becoming a lot more open with the idea that that they don't have to have that mainstream view of reality. They can be it's okay to be weird. I think it's just hard for teenagers in high school to be weird. They don't want to be the weird one.
Yeah, I keep telling everyone I've embraced my weirdness a long time ago.
And that's a good thing.
Yes, because growing up when you're a little different, it's a little tough. Because I've always been into the paranormal, and my friends used to always call me, you're weird. You like stuff like that. It's how can you like that? But it was something that's always intrigued me, and now those same people are like, well, maybe she's not so weird.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the Mandela effect too, because it shows that what we see and what we take for physical reality can be changed. So just because something looks one way, it doesn't need to stay that way. And these changes can happen instantly.
Mhm.
So it's a super cool area of the paranormal to be looking into. Because to me, it's very hopeful. I don't take it as dark and scary,
No,
or
no.
or some kind of weird conspiracy. Even if there is a conspiracy, I think nature was there first.
Mhm.
So what if CERN shows up and they're trying to tweak it? Good luck topping what nature can do. I don't think that they can. So I feel like this is meant for all of us, all of humanity, to gain these tools to be able to basically start working with reality selection through a focused attention and just getting a little better grip on our fears so that we're not frightened of everything. And again, I'm really glad.
Oh, I lost you. Oh no. Oh, there you are. The last
Yes.
thing I heard you say was, "I'm really glad that you," and you stopped.
Oh, I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing
Oh, thank you.
because of a show like yours, it helps people understand that they can look into things they might think are weird or scary, but they're okay. You bring light to it.
Yeah, and I found that if people have had experiences, whether it's Mandela Effect or ghosts or whatever, a lot of times they don't want to talk about it, and it can just eat away at them. So because they think they're alone, and when they hear shows like this, then they realize, oh, I'm not the only one, and it can actually help them. And then they find like-minded people, and then they just start talking about it, and that's the whole reason why I'm doing this.
Boy, I'm glad you are. And the other
you.
thing I wanted to mention, and I hope there's still time. I don't know if
Oh,
we're
yes.
okay.
Oh, wait, we have a
Good.
few more minutes.
Yeah. So this is great. I want to make sure I mention that this kind of reality selection we're able to do with the Mandela effect, often we notice it happening the most when we move between observing, an observation where you're kind of measuring something, you're looking at it, you kind of just like you decide, oh, there's a tree there or there's not. So you're in the observation mode, and then you can go into like daydream, pure energy mode. And everybody does this when you walk down the hallway. You think you know what you're going for, and sometimes you forget. It's almost like you walk down through a different reality when you go through a doorway.
Yeah.
So you can use that. You can actually use that. You've got portals in your home. You've got your hallway. And if you need to change a reality, like you're sick or you don't want to be sick, just keep walking down the hallway, go through a door, and just decide, I need to know how good it can get. I need to make a different selection. And I've
I
used this
like
to
that.
find things when they're missing from the cupboard, like nutmeg. I didn't have any, but I know I can get it I'll just keep checking the cupboard, the same exact cupboard. Nobody's putting nutmeg in the cupboard. What I'm doing is I just walk around the house. I come back, open the cupboard.
Oh, lost you again. Oh, why does this keep happening? Oh, there you go.
I don't know.
This is weird. I've never had this happen. This
Wow.
is very strange.
I haven't had this happen either.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
I've heard of others, other podcasters have real difficulties with Skype, but I've never had them. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
I've
portals.
heard about this. This is the first time I've had it too.
Yeah. So you're saying about the nutmeg?
Right. So I did the same thing I'm talking about. It would just walk away, come back, check again, and walk away, come back, check again. I did a video and a blog about this exact thing about the nutmeg, and it did finally come back. I just know don't quit and stay in that kind of happy-go-lucky, blissed out, kind of high energy, relaxed, sort of pure energy state, and then check, and then go back into bliss out, pure energy state. I've had good luck pulling dollar bill out of my wallet. Again, that's 3 inches from the palm of my hand. So I'm really good at real life magic tricks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff that anybody can do just with walking down the hallway and give something another try.
There's quite a few times that I'm looking for something and I know it was there before and all of a sudden it's not there. And I'm driving myself crazy trying to find whatever the item it is. And I'll actually out loud say, this isn't funny anymore, put it back. And then I go to look and it's there.
Love it. Yeah. It's kind of getting to that point where like, okay, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
And that's it, lining your whole self up so that you're not putting up with any nonsense. And
Yeah.
it's not just your conscious mind, but it's all of you, all of a piece. I think that's what humanity is working on right now, just dealing with our shadow stuff. And I wish we had more sense of humor. So
Yes.
that would be a good thing.
My children are always telling me, because you have two types of morning people. You have the happy people, and then you have the people that don't even look at them before they've had their first 10 cups of coffee. Well, I'm the happy person who will sing and laugh first thing in the morning, and my entire family, my husband and children, all look at me and like, how can you be so happy in the morning? Like, I just am. I just am. I'm sorry. They just want to
funny.
smother me.
I love it. Yeah. I love that I got to see you before we started the show
I
today.
know, me
'cause
too.
You've got so much joy. It just bubbles right out. I love it. It's
Thanks.
infectious.
Yeah, I can see it in your eyes. Folks, usually when I do the Skype recording, it's just audio. We did video for a couple of minutes, and so we got to actually see each other live. And yeah, you have really happy, positive eyes and nice smile, and yeah, it's just a really nice vibe that you can even pick up through Skype.
Oh, thank you. Well, I feel the same thing. It's about you. It's so mutual.
Thanks. So we just have a few more minutes to go. Maybe you can tell us about what your plans are. What are you working on? Are you having any other books out? And tell us where they can find you and your books.
Right. I'm writing a new book about the Mandela Effect Society and the Great Awakening from me to we. So it's all about the science and history of the Mandela Effect. And I'll be giving a presentation and a talk at the Mandela Effect Conference in Connecticut the first weekend in June. And there's a website to check it out, mandelaeffectconference.com. But my own website has all that plus more, and that's realityshifters.com. And there you can subscribe to my monthly free newsletter.
Which I get.
Check out. Oh, yes. And you can totally have fun with wherever else I might be on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff. And I've got a podcast that I also produce called Living the Quantum Dream. And it's got links to that. And so the newsletter's great. The website is the central hub for accessing all of that.
Oh, I didn't know about your podcast.
Yeah, that's through Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, based out of Boston. And it's been running now for a number of years. I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of scientists. I like to explore each of their kind of very specialized, focused looks at the nature of reality. So I've had physicist John Kramer talk about the future affecting the past with his transactional interpretation of quantum physics. But I keep it for the layperson, so it's not too heavy or weird. And I've had Jerome Busemeyer talk about quantum cognition and decision making and how our minds are set up in a very quantum fashion. So we're not illogical, we're quantum logical. And just a whole lot more. I've had lots of great scientists on the show and lots of other people too. It's not all scientists.
I'm gonna have to check it out. Is it live?
No, it's all the shows are now archived. It's never put on live. I always pre-record, so it's basically now it's an archived body of work. And I think the ones you might be interested in would be the ones I mentioned, definitely. Plus, I've also talked with Dr. Larry Dossey. I've talked to Dr. Dean Radin, Rupert Sheldrake, pretty much anybody that's interested in the nature of consciousness. And, because I think they all hold some keys to what's going on, what's happening with these reality shifts, these Mandela effects. Mm-hmm. And what can we learn from each of these experts in their field?
Very interesting. And folks, like usual, I will be adding all the links in the show notes when this gets released, so you don't have to remember what you just heard here. You just have to click, and it'll magically bring you to that spot that you're looking for. Well, Cynthia, thank you so very much for being on. I really appreciate it. This was really fascinating for me.
Oh, thank you, Kat. I've had a great time.
I did too. And we'll keep in touch.
Skype mostly worked.
Well, we've made it to the end of another episode. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, take care of each other. And if you'd like to be on the show or have questions and comments, just drop me an email, paranormalheart13@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Paranormal Heart would like to extend a special thank you to PurplePlanet.com for supplying the music for the show. The views and opinions expressed on Paranormal Heart are those of the host and participants.